For me, it was coming together with a couple of friends, really because I wanted to have extra pocket money. So decided to sell my pre-loved clothes online for a scholarship in university. I had to break off my bond to start the business. And the only person I could go to was my mom. And I realized only after that, the amount of money that I needed was actually her entire life savings.
At all stages of a business, there's massive difficulties. When I even think about ourselves in the businesses that I've been in and continue to be in, there's so many ups and downs. During that downturn that happened in your family, were your parents continuing to be positive? And welcome to another episode of Rise Podcast, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. As you know, the premise of this podcast is to speak with and meet with accomplished individuals, understand their story, understand their life path, understand their successes, and also understand their struggles in order to learn and to use those lessons in our own lives. So today, I'm really excited. Today, we've got Rachel Lim. Rachel, how are you?
Hi, Gary. I'm so excited to firstly see you again, even if it's virtually, and get to speak to you. And of course, all the way from Singapore with the insane time difference, nothing is going to stop us.
So what time is it for you now? It's 8 o'clock. It's 8 p.m. for me.
I'm exactly 12 hours ahead of you, so I'm at 8 a.m.
8 a.m. So you're just starting your day.
Yes, I am.
This is awesome. So before I get into kind of your accolades, and what I like to do is I like to set the tone by first, explaining what a person's accomplished, what a person has done. And it really sets the tone for the rest of the conversation so that the viewers have this frame of reference and they have kind of what to go off of. But before we do, it's really good to see you. We met, I think, was it in March now? Has it been since March?
I think so, yes. It's
Or
been
April?
maybe 3 months.
Maybe 3 months. So we met at a really cool place. We met in Ibiza. So Valeria and I were there, and we were fortunate enough to be sitting beside you at dinner. And I have to say, you're probably one of the loveliest people that I have ever met.
Oh.
You are awesome. Valeria and I were so blown away by you, and and obviously you're expecting. Is it a secret? I hope it's not a secret that you're expecting.
No, it's not. Yeah.
And you're just like the cutest pregnant lady. So we had a great time. We had a great time at dinner with you, and we chatted so much. And we really enjoyed our time with you. And you were a trooper too, because all of the events that were happening. So we were in Ibiza just to provide more context, we were in Ibiza for this
parties, not for the insane parties.
No. Right. I forgot that I have to explain that. Yeah, we weren't in Ibiza you weren't partying when you were like halfway through your pregnancy. No. We were at a spiritual retreat at the Six Senses, which was like a very, very calm, very low key retreat, very health oriented. I would say it's like a spiritual retreat. It was put on by our mutual friends, Alex and Mimi Icon from Intelligent Change. Yeah. And actually I had Alex on the show 2 days ago.
Oh, wow. Amazing. I am looking forward to that episode too.
It was a fun episode. I've known him for about 5 years, and we really dove into it, and I learned a lot about Alex. So we were at the spiritual retreat, and we had such a good time, and you were such a trooper because all of you were walking around and you were going to all the things, and I felt good actually when you cut out relatively early and said, okay guys, I'm ready to go to bed. Because I witnessed firsthand 3 pregnancies myself, obviously Valeria. So I good for you for staying out as long as you have. Rachel, I want to jump into your accolades, and I want to kind of jump into explaining and giving people some context as to kind of as to your accomplishments, and then we'll dive right into it. It is a bit of a lengthy explanation because even at such a young age, although you're very young, you've accomplished a tremendous amount. So bear with me. I'm going to read through it, and we'll take it from there. So Rachel is the Singaporean co-founder of Love Bonito. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Exactly right.
Okay, Love Bonito, fashion brand with over 495,000 followers on Instagram that has achieved tremendous success in Asia and has been featured in the New York Post, USA Today, People, Women's Wear Daily, Good Housekeeping, Business Insider, Bloomberg, Business of Fashion, and many more. Rachel started at the age of 19 with a fashion blog shop selling pre-loved clothes. Along with her university friends, they transformed it into a thriving brand that now dominates the fashion industry across Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. She took a bold step, dropping out of university to focus on entrepreneurship, and her dedication paid off. Today, Love Bonito is a multi-million-dollar fashion empire known for its unique design and its mission to empower confidence through style. Rachel's journey from a fashion blog shop to a leading fashion brand is nothing short of remarkable. With a strong focus on creating clothes that flatter Asian women, Love Bonito has become a go-to brand for many. Rachel's entrepreneurial spirit and determination to make a difference have been key drivers of her success. Despite facing obstacles along the way, she continued to build her business, secure funding, and expand into new markets. Rachel's story is an inspiration, highlighting the power of following your passion and believing in your vision. Rachel also boasts an Instagram audience of over 140,000 followers on her personal account. She's been personally featured in Forbes, the South China Morning Post, Vogue Hong Kong, Yahoo Lifestyle Singapore, and is also the host of her own podcast called Rach Reflects, which is the intersection of learning and living through the voices and experience of diverse guests. Last but definitely not least, Rachel, along with her husband Leo, have a 2-year-old son named Ollie, and they are currently expecting their second child.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
I summed it up. Well, no, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's, it's great. And you are such a kind of, you're such a humble person, because when we met, we kind of, you kind of chatted briefly about, your career and what you do in your business, but we didn't get into it. You're one of these people that you were far more interested in what we had going on, and I feel I think that's a trait that I see in a lot of successful people, that they're very mindful and they're more curious about about other people, and they show respect by inquiring about other people. And I thought that was awesome. So let's just jump into this. Obviously, like, you started when you were 19. You were an entrepreneur already at the age of 19, which is a massive undertaking and a massive risk. But let's go back a little and tell me where you were born. I'm guessing Singapore, right?
Yes, so I was born and raised in Singapore. This was 36 years ago now. I grew up in a family with 2 other brothers. I'm the middle child, the only daughter. But I wouldn't say I experienced kind of any middle child syndrome. For me, I have always been very close to my brothers. And in that sense, have also gotten the attention and love from my brothers growing up. And till today, they are key, strong pillars of strength in my life. For example, I always go to them and trust them to tell me the truth of things. And I think that's something that has made a huge impact in my life. So growing up, my father was a businessman, and then he went through bankruptcy in the Asian financial crisis, became a cab driver. And that was when I was in university.
Wow. No, I was just saying, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and so I experienced that, going through like the hard times, going through days where, watching my mom work 2 to 3 jobs just to support the family, and for me too, when I was in university, to like what you shared, I think for me it was coming together with a couple of friends, really because I wanted to have extra pocket money, so decided to sell my pre-loved clothes online. This was about 18 years ago. And 18 years ago, the internet and online shopping isn't like what it is today. There wasn't smartphones, there wasn't like social media. Back then, I was selling it on like the eBay of Singapore. And that was how it really started. After a while of doing that, we ran out of clothes to sell. We ran out of pre-loved clothes to sell. But customers kept coming back for more. I think it was the novelty of shopping online that was so interesting. So we decided to use the money that we had saved to go overseas to import clothes to sell. That was what we did for a bit, during school term breaks and weekends. And after that, I realized there was always something missing from the pieces that we brought in, be it the quality, the fit, the color. So finally, in my final year of university, I decided to drop out of school to start the business proper.
Wow.
And I remember, because I was bonded to the government for a scholarship in university, I had to break off my bond to start the business, which meant I had to pay a 5-figure sum to the government, to drop out of school. And obviously I didn't have that sum of money. And the only person I could go to was my mom. And, for her, she had so much hesitations because back then, this was like 2009, she was asking me like, is what you're doing legal, selling things online like that? Why are people, sending you money before they see and receive their goods? And things like that. And I realized only after that, the amount of money that I needed was actually her entire life savings. So no prizes for guessing. She decided to take that bet and leap of faith on me, and
To pay that penalty.
to pay the bond that I had to pay, to the government. It's a penalty,
So-
indeed. Yeah.
So this wasn't even an investment into your business.
No,
This was
exactly.
a penalty just
This-
to be able to get you
Yeah,
out.
exactly. This was not even an investment to the business. This was just to get me out of school so that I could come
Wow.
out to start the business. But I knew deep down, that I needed to strike when the iron is hot, and give it a try. And back then I was still young. I told myself, if this were to fail, I can always go back to studying and work to pay my mom off. But if I didn't give this a good shot, I might forever regret. So that was how the journey really was. Yeah.
So let's go back a little, because what I'm trying to uncover is the mentality and the circumstances that people have that lead them to, first of all, take these kind of risks. Because despite how popular and how glorified entrepreneurialism is, it's still, statistically, more people do not do it than people who do, especially back in, I believe it was 2005.
Yeah.
When you started this. So take me back kind of earlier to your childhood. You said before this financial crisis, when your family, this happened with your family,
Yeah.
when your father lost your fortune, I guess, and he, that must have been devastating. But
Yeah.
prior to that, you grew up in, I'm guessing, like a relatively affluent family financially. Everything was, was good. You mentioned earlier on that your brothers were a big influence, and they continue to be a big
Yeah.
influence. So that bond with your family seemed very strong from early on, and specifically with your siblings. And I'm guessing that helped tremendously,
Yeah.
just in your overall kind of attitude. It shaped you as a person who was confident to go off and do what you've done.
That's a great point, Gary. Growing up, when I was growing up, the first 10 years of my life, my family was in the upper middle class. My dad was a businessman, was doing well in that sense. And I think for me, one thing when I look back, firstly, I like you said, I truly believe that our upbringing, our conditioning, our growing up years has a huge impact on the way we turn out. And I think for me, growing up, my mom especially had such an interesting way of bringing us up. It was, although you might have heard quite a bit about Asian parenting, where it's very strict. We don't express love as much. We don't express or even praise, children as much. But growing up, I've always had that innate sense of confidence from my mom. So, for example, when we were young, I realized that, I remember very clearly one incident when I was about 11 years old, and I was taking part in a school race, a sports meet. And it was a race where I came in fourth, and I was so embarrassed and upset because I obviously didn't get a medal. But when I went back to the stands where my parents were at, they were cheering
Yeah.
for me like I had won, and I was like, why are you doing that? And they were like, they were just applauding me in my effort and the courage to be able to, take part in something that I really wanted to. And it's little incidents like that. Even when I was young, whenever I attempted to spell a difficult word back then, when I attempted to spell like emergency. For that age, it was difficult, and I would misspell severely. But my mom would just, encourage and applaud me for the courage to try. And growing up, she told us, obviously one day we're going to learn how to spell emergency correctly. But it's really also, applauding the courage to try and giving me that sense of, in a sense, like self-belief, to not be afraid to make mistakes, to just give it a shot, because you never know. And I think that was something that was instilled in me since I was young, so just taking that leap of faith, just trying. What's the worst that can happen? If I get it wrong, I can always go back to learn. So it's not being afraid to fail in that sense. And even in that failure, celebrating the courage to try, and then reflecting on, how we can become better. So this is a really great question, and for me also, the closeness to my brothers. Growing up also, we had, like, besides going through bankruptcy, my parents, also went through a very rocky stage in their marriage. And that also caused my brothers and I to band very closely together. And that was when we really solidified our relationship with each other, depended a lot on each other emotionally as well, till today. So I think that is something that has helped me tremendously, because I know, and I know for sure that they are the two persons that I can run to if anything were to happen. They are the two persons that I can trust to tell me the truth of things, which is really important, because you also don't want to sit in an echo chamber where everybody, just agrees to what you said. So for me, having that challenge network in my brothers really helped me also be able to be more self-aware and grow through life.
So I mean, it's beautiful. Like it really is beautiful to hear about the relationship with your parents and your brothers, but specifically with your parents, for them to be as supportive as they were. I think, I believe, just kind of from what I'm hearing, the courage that's required to be an entrepreneur, the courage that's required to take the steps that you have and that you continue to, because at all stages of a business there's massive difficulties.
Yeah.
Do you adopt how much of your success do you kind of credit to your upbringing, to the way that your mother and your father raised you? Because I can imagine, like, it sounds to me like they're very positive people, especially in regards to what their children do, but when your family as a whole was dealing with that very difficult and negative situation, how did they handle that? Like, were they still smiling at home? I mean, as much as possible, because I think that when I even think about ourselves, in the businesses that I've been in and continue to be in, there's so many ups and downs. And I think it's so challenging to stay positive and stay smiling and look at the bright side and be optimistic. So during that downturn, when that happened in your family, were your parents continuing to be positive?
Yeah. For me, a huge source of my inspiration and strength is really my mom. And you usually see what someone is made of only when they go through the fire. And for me, watching my mom, firstly, she came from a well-to-do family, and after the financial crisis, my dad went through bankruptcy. We lost everything. She lost everything, and also almost at the same time went through a betrayal in her marriage. And we as children, we really saw, the pain and the hurt that she went through. We had to move out to live together in a one-room flat in Singapore, where we had to share a room together, and every night we
with
would
your
watch.
Father. With your father as well. Okay.
So
So the family stayed together through these problems.
Yes, we did. So
Okay.
only because it's my mom's choice, she really wanted us to stay together as a family, and every night we would watch her cry herself to sleep, but in the morning, she would wipe away her tears, show up for her kids, and, go to work again. And I think for me, watching her go through all of that and keeping her joy through it all, I really don't know how she did it. It's like
Amazing.
even thinking about a fraction of just what she went through. And one day, I had the courage to ask her, like, Mom, how did you do it exactly? And I will never forget what she told me. She said, the world can take away everything from us, our wealth, our savings, relationships, things like that, but they can never take away your spirit. And that is something that I really hold so true to. And that is something that I consciously developed to ensure that I have a strong spirit. Because when the going gets tough, and the going will get tough, that's possibly the
Yes.
only thing that we can hold on to. And that is something that I really saw her live it out in her life, through the different setbacks, disappointments, failures that she went through. And that for me was just such a huge encouragement that today, even when I go through disappointments, failures in the business, I tell myself, it's okay, the world can take away, can take away things from me, but they can never take away my spirit. And that is something that I really hold very true to.
That's incredible. You know what? That's such a valuable life lesson. It sounds to me like your mother gave you such an incredible tool with her example of dealing with hardships, both financially, personally. It sounds like your mother, your mother has this strength. How much of that? I mean, your son, he's still little. He's only 2 years old, but do you see yourself instilling this type of resilience, this type of positivity through difficult times to your children?
Yeah, I definitely aspire to and want to, Gary. I think this is something, especially we know as kids, we don't just, it's not just about what our parents say, right? It's really about how our parents act at the end of the day, how they behave, how they are, that we really learn from. And I think for me, that reminds me also then, as a parent, how is not just about teaching verbally or disciplining verbally, but also leading by example. That is really important. And I think even though Ollie is 2 years old, he's turning 3, but I think for me, it's also being very conscious, even in the little things like, if I feel like I'm frustrated, because even in the simplest things like, I'm struggling to open up a package, how do I respond? How do I react? Do I just give up and take the easy way out, or do I sit down and try and persist? It's little things like that that I feel at this age for Ollie, he might already be absorbing. So for me, it's something that
Absolutely.
I'm very conscious of, which is also why I enjoy speaking so much to people like yourself and Valeria, because, I'm so intrigued by how both of you are as examples to your 3 amazing boys, and especially to each other
Thank you.
in marriage as well. So for sure, I do think it's something that I consciously think about and ensure that I also want to become for my kids.
Does it come naturally to you? Because just drawing from my own experience, and thank you for that nice compliment, in regards to myself and Valeria with the kids. But if I'm being truthful, then I can tell you that it is challenging at times, and it is challenging when things aren't going the way that you want them to go in the business, or things aren't going the way you want them to go personally, or whatever. You're not achieving whatever you want to achieve, and then one of the children acts up and they have a tantrum, or the 2 older boys get into a fight. It's very difficult for me. I think Valeria is better at it, but it's definitely difficult for me to stay kind of positive and smiling and not reacting. Do you feel that it comes natural to you? Is it natural for you to stay calm during difficult situations, especially in front of your loved ones, or is it something that you feel you have to work on? It's definitely something that I continue to work on.
Yeah, no, staying calm is definitely not something that comes naturally to me, as you shared. I think I know that I've had to put in a lot of work. So what I try to work on then is, is being very self-aware and to catch myself when I'm losing my cool, or when I'm becoming like overwhelmed and frantic. In that sense, I would take time out to really cool down, whether is it, breathing exercises, or even taking time out to just cry it out, just to, acknowledge the emotions, let it out, and then, come back again to compose myself. So for me, it doesn't come naturally, hence I need to put in a lot more work to be a lot more aware and intentional, and then come up with solutions that can help me get to a state of equanimity at least, so that I can better approach problems. And as you know as well, I think as leaders in the organization also, it's not just kids at home that watch us, it's also the teams that watch us. So I think it's also
Absolutely.
being responsible for that, and knowing that, how we respond, what we say, what we do has a direct impact on the people around us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just making a quick note here.
Yeah.
There's a question I'm going to ask you later, just referencing so I don't forget. In terms of your journey, I mean, considering, and I'm not really sure of the timeline, but considering kind of what happened in your family when you then decided that you want to be an entrepreneur, were there concerns from either of your parents about you becoming an entrepreneur, considering kind of the negative situation that happened as a result of them being entrepreneurs?
Yeah, 100%. Especially back in the day, this is 2009, 2008, where the word entrepreneur is not like what it is today. Today is such a buzzword,
Sure.
everybody understands it. Everybody knows how to spell it, I mean, back then, it's not something that is heard of as well, much less a woman entrepreneur, and much less a young woman entrepreneur. So I think
So let's unpack that for a bit. I apologize for interrupting. I want to unpack
let's
that
go.
for a bit, because you just added another layer. So here's what I'm not familiar with. I've never been to Singapore.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar at all with kind of the culture in your region.
Yes.
But as a woman, as a female entrepreneur going into business, do you feel that in your part of the world, I'm assuming you've been to the United States and you've kind of experienced the culture in the United States.
Yeah.
Do you feel that women are seen as, and again, I'm asking out of complete ignorance because I really don't know. Are women seen as like equal to men professionally in the entrepreneurial world, or does the culture in Singapore and in the region kind of see women a little differently?
Yeah. Today, yes, the equality is definitely much closer. But when I first started, this was like 2008, 2009. Yeah, it's so different. People are not used to seeing that many women in leadership positions, plus much less, women bosses, entrepreneurs, So I think even for me, there was so much that we had to overcome. People thought that, oh, you're a young girl, what do you know? They're so
That's
used to...
the other thing. Sorry,
Exactly.
you're also very young.
Yeah.
So you're a young woman.
Yeah.
So okay. So I just wanna understand. So you're becoming an entrepreneur in the wake of this kind of disaster that happened financially to your family as a result of being entrepreneurs. You're young. You're in your you're 19 when you started this blog, and then you're in your early 20s when you actually turned it into a business. And then, at that point, you're young, you're a woman, you're going into business. Are you getting pressure at this point? I'm trying to understand what you had to overcome to do this, because I'm assuming you're getting pressure from your family in some way. Maybe not. Maybe you're getting complete support. There's your parents, there's your brothers, there's society at large. There's your, you had to probably convince your partners, because maybe they were scared to do it because they also had other situations. So tell me about that. Like how did you overcome all of these things to actually start this business, and how was it proven out to go into this?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Gary. And I think also for context, especially in Asia, parents expect you to at least have a university certificate to fall back on. So that's one.
Right.
In Asia, parents hope and expect that either you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, if not, you're a failure. So there was a lot of expectations in that sense, of, getting a secure job, a high-paying job in that sense. Like, no one talks about coming out to start your own business at this age. It's really unheard of. And those were the times that I was really trying to navigate through. And I think at the end of the day, I was just telling my mom, look, I've tried this on the side for a few years now, and there is momentum that has built. I do know that, I really want to give this a shot. If not, I would forever wonder and regret, what if I had given it a shot, how it might have turned out in that sense. So I'm very grateful for my mom to support me. But did she really agree to it back then? No, because I think she was also very worried, right? And anxious because like you rightly pointed out, that was also the time where my family wasn't doing well financially, and she was hoping that I would come out to have a stable income to support and help support the family. But in the end, I took a completely different route. So that was also something that she maybe had to grow to accept. And then, yes, of course, I faced so many different kinds of criticisms or judgment from even my relatives and the people around the community, who even discouraged my mom, or even asked her, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Is it wise? And things like that. And for me, at some point, it's also, and that was maybe one of the first lessons into learning how to shut out the noises out there, because there will always be opinions, even unsolicited opinions, right? And there will always be people casting judgment, telling you what to do. But at the end of the day, it's really also tuning into that still small voice inside of us, and to be able to, be very convicted on why we want to do what we do. And then, number two, be accountable for our decisions. And that is something that I'm so glad that, whether I was naive or ignorant or stubborn back then, I was really just sticking to my guts and just deciding to try, because I know that if I were to put my heart and soul into building this, there is a good chance that this might turn out well. So, yeah, I mean, I really also owe it to my mom for really also handing me that check so that I could drop out of school to co-start the business. But that's really a difficult time, not just for me, but for her to navigate.
Of course, especially with considering kind of where you guys were financially. So, so I read that you started this blog in 2005. So you were publishing content to the blog, generating traffic, I guess, through content, and then you were selling your pre-owned own pre-owned clothing.
Yeah.
Right. So that started taking off. I'm guessing you had set up, was it Shopify back then or whatever? There was some kind of a platform that you were using, right?
Shopify
you didn't build
exist,
the platform from scratch.
Yeah.
Oh, it didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So you custom built your own platform to do sales?
Yeah. So what we did was we kind of used like the eBay of Singapore. It was a live journal.
Oh, that's right. You were saying.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was
it wasn't
how
your
it
own
was.
domain. It wasn't your own domain.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. So that was also something that we tapped on. Yeah.
So how many years? I understand. So how many years did you do this, and how was that scaling? I guess between you and your university friends.
Yeah.
How many years did you do that before you took this leap and said, okay, I'm doing this full time? It's not because you were doing this part time while you were in school.
Yeah.
Correct?
So we did this for a couple of years, selling pre-owned clothes and then going overseas to import clothes to sell, before we decided that, what? There really is a gap in the market. Even with the clothes that we were importing, we were not satisfied with it because it wasn't like designed to the way that we wanted to. There were details that were missing. And also back then, a lot of international brands, fashion brands that were coming into the Asian market were primarily created for the Western women that have very different body proportions, skin tone needs than us Asian women. So that was how it started, where we decided, okay, you know what? Since we have already built a certain level of momentum, we kind of know what customers are looking for. We also have a small but loyal base of customers. Why don't we try to design and manufacture our own collection? So that was how it started in 2010 officially.
But at the same time, you also had to take care of your tech stack. You had to build your tech out.
Yeah.
Right? Because there was no Shopify, so you had to build.
Yes.
So you were relying on this kind of eBay of Asia at the time to do all of that work.
And then we moved to PrestaShop. We moved to a .com where we used PrestaShop. And of course, this was something that was completely new to us. For me especially, no fashion, no business background at all, having to learn things from scratch, having to read up so much, and because we were the pioneers in the scene, in that sense, we had to figure out a lot of things on our own, and then it was like speaking to people who are smarter than us in the different aspects to be able to help us, build out, like you said, like a proper website, to get the business going online, things like that. Yeah, so there was a lot of learning.
Right, but I feel respectfully you're being a little nonchalant about it, and what I mean by that is that you're simplifying it, because I know very well what's involved in creating a domain, and that's like your own domain with the tech that you have to create, with the color schemes and with the back end and the integrations with various payment gateways and customer service applications and accounting, and it's endless. So there's so much technical work to do there, and you are a young woman who, I mean, you have a good eye for fashion, obviously, and it's through that good eye for fashion that you were able to curate product that people would buy, and that's a very kind of that's like a very creative brain that can do that can curate those products, and that can also merchandise those products effectively. The technical aspect of it, again, you're kind of simplifying it and you're being very humble, but that is very complex. Then there's the marketing component that you have to now, when you were on this platform, this like eBay of Asia, when you were on this platform had its own traffic to a certain degree, right? It had its own traffic plus the traffic that you were kind of pushing to it through your blog. But now you're migrating over to your own domain. Not only the tech, all the stuff that I just mentioned, how complex that is, but now you're dealing with the fact that you now have to get your own traffic. Now, all of this at the same time is, you're dealing with the creation of clothes. So are you simply just buying clothes, or you're actually designing and manufacturing at this point?
Yeah. So when we moved already in 2010 to a .com, right? We already were designing and manufacturing our own clothing and pieces. So you're right. I think there's so much involved. And I think that for once, was eye-opening, as to like the different aspects of a business that perhaps for me back then I never knew existed, that I never knew I had to take care of, right? Beyond everything else that you mentioned, was also like customer experience, customer service, building a team, things like that. That was like complex, and I had to make so many mistakes and learn them on the go together with my co-founders. So,
But I mean, I didn't even touch upon that. About there's the human resources piece. There's the financing piece. Like you can't, like we were just coming off of doing our own product line, which I don't know if I mentioned to you when we met, but we shut it down. Like we started a clothing line for Valeria, and we decided to kind of put our efforts back into the media, because the media, number one, is lucrative, and number two, scaling Valeria's personal brand is just more of a kind of a long-term vision for us. So we really want to concentrate our efforts there. But I'm very familiar with what the complexities of all of this and the amount of funding required. And we had a massive audience of like over 6 million followers. But for yourself, you don't have this audience. Now you have a nice audience. You have 500,000 people. But how are you dealing with, like, you're a young woman in your early 20s, and the reason I'm pointing this out is because a lot of people today who want to go into business or who are in business, they have all of these things thrown at them. They have all of this complexity and hardship thrown at them, because you're essentially trying to build something, and at the same time you're trying to make it so that there's kind of cash flow to make it feasible as you go. You're smiling because I'm reminding you of those days where you were constantly trying to build something, improve it, but doing the work to make sure that the cash flow kept coming in. This is complicated. Like you're not, you're talking about a very complex business in a market that wasn't fully matured, with lack of technical infrastructure available to you. I guess I'm trying to get to is, how the heck did you figure all of this out? I want the listeners to understand, what is this will that they have to have in order to push through, to get through these barriers. Because I'm really trying to illustrate how hard it is what you did. So how I guess it's an open-ended question, and but like how do people do this? How do people get through these hardships and this complexity?
I know, Gary. I love that you understand so intimately, the details behind what it takes to build a business and a product business in that sense, it's tough because,
Yeah.
I mean, even if you talk about bringing you back to, when we first started, looking for the right manufacturers, establishing that trust.
Yeah.
We had so many doors, slammed on us because, we're just a couple of young girls, and we obviously could not fulfill the minimum order that was required. And we almost gave up until finally there was a kind soul. Back then was in China. He decided to just take a bet on us. I think he took pity on us. But, that was when it really kickstarted everything for us. Until today, he's one of our main manufacturers. So I think there is so much, right? But one thing that I really hold true to is this concept by Jim Collins, where he says, before we fire the cannonball, we fire bullets, which means before we fire huge investments, huge undertakings, we test by firing bullets, because that's when you get to take smaller risks, you get to adjust and fine-tune, your direction, your strategy before you really go all in with a huge investment and huge bet. And I think that's something that I still hold true to today, in whatever different ways that we do in the business. And I think that for me has been very helpful to also understand, okay, what are the small steps and what are the small risks and investments that I can take? And if it does well, great, I'm going to double down. But if it doesn't, I can pull back and it wouldn't be as painful. It's a lesson learned, and we'll change direction. So I think for me, that has been also very helpful, and in really growing the business in that sense. I think today, a lot of people have a lot of pressure to, once they start, go from a 0 to 100. But for me, I had, maybe because I was a pioneer in the industry back then, we had the luxury in that sense of, going from 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20.
Yeah.
And still, sort of like rely on our own funding in that sense, like, just channeling the profits to reinvesting in the business versus having to have a significant investment already from the get-go. So it's also a very much more competitive market today. So I think for me, what really helped was, of course, having that first mover's advantage, but that can only get you so far. Other than that, it's also really, at the end of the day, for me, I really believe in, taking a series of experiments before we fire the final cannonball.
Wow. Yeah, it's I honestly feel that fashion specifically is probably one of the toughest businesses out there. Just
You're
because
right.
of the relatively small margins, the large overhead,
Yes.
the long periods of manufacturing
The
time
inventory, the
kind
risk, yeah.
it takes months. It takes like 6 months, 3 to 6 months to come up with, like, from when you're smiling because
Conception.
like
It's
I just went through all
right,
of this.
Gary. Yeah.
It's good for you because wow, it's so difficult, and to do it the way you're doing it now and to maintain it, it truly is incredible. So at what point in your business did you take an investment?
Yeah.
And how many employees did you have at the time that you took an investment? Because I'm trying to understand how much you scaled it with complete, like, bootstrapping organic growth.
Yeah.
And what was your overhead? Like, I don't want the actual number, but like, how many employees did you have
Got it.
right before you took an investment?
Yeah. So we started officially in 2010, where we came out to design and manufacture our own line, and in 2015, I received a Facebook message from who is now my first investor, Hien, and he was messaging me on Facebook. He was like, "Oh, hi, I'm not a creep. I just want to reach out to introduce myself because I can't find you on any other platform. But I wanted to say that I came across your business, and I'm very curious to also then, get to know you and your business to see how I can potentially value add." So he was also an entrepreneur. He started Asian Food Channel, and then, he came out to start a venture fund to invest in smaller businesses. So back then, 2010 to 2015, we were profitable, bootstrapped, like you said, all the way. And we were not thinking in that sense of, taking any external funding. But still, we went to meet him, to hear him out. And I knew that, I can't just take an investment purely for the sake of money, right? If I really needed money, I could take a bank loan, I could borrow from friends and family, things like that. Money is possibly one of the easiest things that we can possibly get. And in exchange for equity, there needs to be something else. What is that strategic value that you can bring to the business at this stage for us? And after months and months of talking and getting to know each other and expanding my mind on, the investment world, what it's like, for a business to take on external funding to help grow and scale the business, I realized that it was a very good time for us to be able to also get the help of, a VC to come in to also support us through the growth, operationally as well, to lay a strong foundation for us to get to a different stage that we really needed to get to. So I think for me, it was also then recognizing that, wow, there is so much value that this particular VC can bring to us at this stage beyond the funds. And that was when it really, opened up our eyes to also then have like much deeper conversations to really see. Because at the end of the day, I believe, Gary, that there's no right or wrong answer, right? Whether a business should take funding or not, it's something that it's so personal to each business. And I think for me, why I decided then to take on the funds was because I knew that I could really do with the extra help in terms of like the strategy, the open doors that they could do for us back then. And since then, they have been very, very supportive and helpful for us as a business to scale through the different stages. So I think, that was how it really started. Since then, that was 2016, we closed our first round. 2018, we took a Series B investment. 2021, end of 2021, we also had a Series C investment. So I think for me, I always believe that, getting investors on board, it's like looking for a life partner, right? It's such an important decision because you're going to have to deal with each other for a long time. And having the right or wrong investors can make or break your journey and your business. So it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And I mean, it's a whole different episode, I think, on, funding, how to find the right investors, when to start, how to pitch, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I do,
Absolutely.
And for me and the business, I think it is something that has helped us tremendously as to where we want to get to. And, had we been bootstrapped still, I think there's nothing wrong with it, but maybe our growth would have been a lot slower and maybe, maybe more.
It could have been a lot slower, but you could have also been overtaken potentially. So it's not just about the rate of growth; it's about building defenses, right? So having that investment, which caused you to grab more market share, for all had you not have taken that investment and deployed it correctly. With the guidance of the VCs, then you who knows, the business could have gone downhill. I mean, you never know. I don't think it's a bad thing to take investment. Obviously, the deal has to be right. And I had a mentor of mine years ago. He was actually our accountant, who's long since retired. He always said to me, "The devil is in the details." So when you're looking at shareholders agreements, when you're taking an investment, that's kind of what you have to look out for. Tell me about like, while this is all going on and your business is scaling. And obviously, like you've met your partner, you've met your husband, kind of throughout this. What are your like, what's your mom saying now? Because as we talked about earlier on, is that your mom is this like huge influence on you, and she's a source of strength, and she helped you. Excuse me. She helped you with with being able to pay that fee to get you out of school. So what is your mom saying to all of this that she's witnessing, that her daughter, who she helped, and she was rightfully frightened when she did this with the school. When you're now talking to your mom throughout all of this, through like potentially like double-digit percentage growths year over year in your business in top-line sales, when you have a VC come and you're putting in all these systems in place, and you see that like, you're building real value and you're really building a solid future for yourself. What was mom's take on all of this? What did she say? Does she understand what you're doing? Like, is she like kind of fluent in kind of tech and business? Does she get what's going on?
She gets what's going on for sure now, many years later, right? After, online shopping and, basically the digital world became the norm, right? But I think,
Yes.
I think maybe, she takes full credit for everything. I don't know. I'm just joking.
Of course she does.
But I think, well, she has never really expressed it, but I think I think she's proud. And I say this because, she's always there for me at different events, different milestones, cheering me on, and really like the Asian mom, although we don't express much verbally as well, but, just by her actions of always being there, cheering me on, showing up, is also such a testament of, how perhaps she's so proud of, the journey. And she also saw how much I've had to overcome again and again through the last 2 decades, with the business. So I think this is something that she must be proud of. But I think beyond the success of the business, which also is a huge involvement of everybody that came along to build Love Bonito together with me, I think I think she's proud of the woman that I've become along the way, that I didn't lose myself. And, in fact, really focused a lot on doing the inner work, working on myself, and surrounding myself with the right energy, the right people. It's tough, but I try my best too. And, at the end of it, still staying grounded, still not forgetting, my roots, the people around me. And I think that possibly is something that she's most proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing. That kind of leads me to the next question, because I want to dig into that a little bit more, because I don't hide how fond Valeria and I are of you. You're just such a lovely human being, and it's coming out here in this episode. What you do is difficult, to say the least. And I know I keep coming back and I'm saying kind of the same thing over and over again, but being an entrepreneur, especially in I have now experience in your business. It's so hard. There are things that you have to deal with that are just very, very difficult. And I feel that most people, it would turn them into it would turn them mean. It would turn them aggressive. But you're none of those things. Like I said, you're very sweet and you're very nice and you're lovely. How do you keep this demeanor where in speaking with you now, you're obviously, you're very well composed, but I know what's going to happen later on when you get to the office and all the challenges that you're going to be dealing with. How do you create that separation between the stress of your day-to-day and then coming home and being a wife and being a mom and just keeping this pleasantness about you? How does one do this?
Yeah, firstly, Gary, thank you so much. I've been through so much, right? And I've had to learn the difficult ways. I think learn through, difficult circumstances as well. But I think one thing that I really hold true to is maybe 2 things that I really hold true to. Firstly, I will always remember the advice that my mentor gave me. And she said, when things go well, Rach, don't let it get to your head. And when things don't go well, don't let it get to your heart. And I think that's what I really hold true to, to always do my best to ensure that there is equanimity, to ensure that, yes, when things go well, I celebrate, but I, ensure that it doesn't consume me. I move on, I continue to work hard, I don't become complacent. And then secondly, when things don't go well, I set a timer for how long I need to mourn for, grieve, cry, but I pick myself up again and I move on. And that really helps me also develop mental resilience, emotional resilience, to know that there will be good days and there will be bad days. It's at the end of the day how I choose to respond to these days. Secondly, and relatedly, I always tell myself whenever I face any challenges, setbacks, difficulties, whether in my personal life or professional life, I always tell myself, Rach, you have a choice. You can choose to be bitter or you can choose to be better. And I really do think that, the difference at the end of the day between a successful person and a non-successful person, or not a successful person, is not what happens to them, but in how they respond to what happens to them.
Yes.
And that is something that I will always hold true to. Like, when I get overwhelmed, I get stressed, I'll take out a piece of paper, I'll draw a line in the middle, and I'll write on the left, what I can control, and on the right, what I can't control. And I will just, list everything out as much as I can, and then fully focus on the things that I can control, my attitude, my response, my self-talk, so much, right? And the things that I can't control, I just let it go. And for me, it's little tools or framework like this that really help me get through, or it's coping mechanism for me to really get through, the difficult times, and reminding myself, not to become bitter by it. Because I really believe that two persons can go through the same adversity, but why is it that someone comes out defeated, sore, victimizing themselves, blaming the whole world, while the other person comes out, yes, beaten, but but he or she